Development Vision, presentations, discussion, and of course, the opportunity for you to pose questions on any of the topics that are delivered this morning. We're going to begin by setting the day for the theme for this morning. Our theme for today, a safe, secure, decisive, and independent nation. To do the opening remarks and set the stage for the day, please help me welcome the Secretary General of the Ministry of General Affairs, Mrs. Amelia Connor Thomas.
Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, the Honorable Sylvia Jacobs, honorable members of the Council of Ministers in attendance, Secretaries General, distinguished presenters and panelists, Chairman of the Day, Madam Moderator, distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. A little better. Good morning. Welcome to the final day of the launch of the National Development Vision. Today, we will delve into Development Theme 3, a safe, secured, decisive, and independent nation. The National Development Vision envisions a safe, secured, decisive, and independent nation only when St. Maarten is safe, secure, and just. When St. Maarten is independently and responsibly empowered, and when St. Maarten is effectively and decisively governed. These attributes are further broken down into 10 visionary goals. As such, the first half of this morning's session, you will be presented with a series of presentations to highlight the sub-themes within the National Development Vision. The second half of this morning's session, you will be informed on the initiatives of government that are currently ongoing to achieve the goals of the National Development Vision. Because the vision acknowledges the significance of data, this prerequisite will also be highlighted. Today's theme highlights SDG 16, which is to promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. You will agree with me that once we have a broad-based vision that guides all of our efforts and energy in the same direction, this will ensure intentional progress. With this, I open this morning's session and bid you a hearty engagement.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Connor Thomas. We'll now begin with our keynote address for this morning on the theme, and the keynote address will be delivered by Mr. Jason Rogers. Mr. Rogers has a master's degree in Dutch law as well as U.S. comparative law. He has over 18 years of experience in the legal profession, ranging from academics, teaching at a law school in Amsterdam, as well as teaching the police officers and national detectives on St. Maarten, to the practicing of law on the Dutch islands of the Caribbean. Jason has served as a member on various committees, as well as a director on various supervisory boards on St. Maarten and other islands. He is one of the founding partners of the prestigious law firm Hoover and Rogers, attorneys/consultants, and in his free time, he enjoys traveling and fine dining. That's what he wrote. I was just reading what he wrote. Please help me welcome, delivering our keynote address, Mr. Jason Rogers.
Good morning, everyone. Aren't we excited today? By the way, I do like fine dining. I would like to say as well that I like a good glass of red wine, but it might be misinterpreted to be like an alcoholic or whatever it is, have you. So I decided, you know what, let's just keep it a fine dining. And in the theme of, the St. Maarten Food Festival this month, I'm definitely going to be visiting a number of restaurants that we have here on the island. And I hope and encourage each and every one of you to do the same thing because we have great restaurants on the island. Now, I have been asked to, I am very not so much good in these kind of things. Let me see. Great. So, I have been asked to speak to you this morning and actually address you on the topic as it relates to a safe, secure, and decisive St. Maarten. A St. Maarten that in the year of 2030 and beyond. By the way, aren't we excited this morning? Over the last couple of days, you've been able to actually speak and discuss a number of things regarding the National Development Vision here in St. Maarten. My question is, aren't you excited this morning? Not because tomorrow is St. Martin's Day, but it's because you have the opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to actually stand here this morning and actually design the blueprint which will be further be the structure that we're going to build upon in building our country, in building our society. It is history, it's something to think about. So from that perspective, I am very much excited actually. Now, in that respect, I think when you're talking about a vision, when you're talking about St. Maarten being a safe, secure, and decisive society, I think you should also think, what kind of society do we aspire ourselves to be? Now, of course, there are a lot of inequalities within every society, but I think that the goal is in order to reduce that inequality as much as possible. And when we talk about a vision is important for you to have good objectives as a country. I mean, we're just 12 years now being a country, but it's good that we have a vision because it is good to have those end goals, and then you know exactly where you're going. Then you know exactly as well, you need to have a clear and defined pathway. It's good now? It is good to have a defined and clear pathway. Now, when we're talking about a vision, characteristics that come into mind is that you need to have a sound democratic constitutional state. In Dutch, we call that a democratische rechtsstaat. What is that now exactly? It basically, to summarize it, it comes down to the fact that you have persons, individuals within society that can elect the people that govern them. So we have that here in St. Maarten, that we do that via parliamentary elections, which then in turn select the candidates that will then go into the Council of Ministers. But also another characteristic of that as well is that so the people as well as the government is then bound by the rule of law. And that is so important. Something that might seem very normal to us, I think it is important that we be cognizant about that. Why? Because even in the first world country as the United States of America, we see where the democratic and constitutional state is actually under attack. We have seen the January 6th insurrection, where we thought that something like that will never take place in a country such as the United States. We're seeing it's happening. We shall not let that happen here on St. Maarten. And it is important that we follow the rule of law, not only as individuals, but also the government in its action. And then also what is important is a fair and just society. What does that mean? It means that we all should be able to participate equally in this society. Now, in terms about the sound democratic constitutional state, foundation is what is very important, that you have an electoral system that ensures stability. Now, that electoral system is the foundation. Now, what are we talking about? We've seen in the last 12 years in our country, I mean, let's not be secretive about it, we have had various governments. We have seen falls and rise of different governments. It is important, if we're going to strive and aspire to a strong democratic society, that we have some sort of stability as well. Now, does our electoral system work for us? Now, we all know we have inherited we all know we have inherited a system from the former Netherlands Antilles, which in turn was also inherited from the Netherlands. But does that system actually work for us? The question is also, because look, we can say, okay, the system that we have may not work for us, but let's have the discussion whether or not we want to change that system. What system works best for us? And that's why I'm actually a proponent of having these discussions about electoral reform. Now, I'm not saying that our electoral system needs to change per se, but I'm saying let's have that discussion. Now, we can have a discussion, for instance, do we go over to a system whereby the party, where we had back in the past, that, you know, if it is that this party would have like 3 seats, that the first 3 person on that political party will be elected into parliament? Do we want to go back to that system, or do we want to go to a system where we say, well, you know what, we're going to look at the different districts. We say Cold Bay, for instance, will be based on the size, you probably will have 2 or 3 persons into parliament, Dutch Quarter, X amount as well. Would that actually contribute towards the cohesion of a steady parliament and government? I don't know, but that discussion is something that we need to have. Not because we inherit that system means that we have to stick with it. We need to have a system that works for us. But as you can see between brackets, I also say including the participants. The participants are the ones that also need to ensure stability. So the ones that are taking part, the politicians, for instance, they are the ones that are also responsible in ensuring that we have a stable system. And that comes with political maturity as well. So all in all, we have to have that debate here in St. Martin in order to see what system works for us and also to ensure our stable, democratic, constitutional state. Important as well is a strong judiciary. A strong judiciary is very important for a democratic constitutional state. Because if you have to be doubting your judiciary, that does not put confidence in our legal system. Now, in terms of the judiciary, if we want to aspire to that strong democratic society, 2030 and beyond, we have to ensure we have enough judges, enough prosecutors, enough lawyers. We don't have enough of that right now. And of course, we don't also have enough of our own. We have to ensure that we motivate our own to be able to study the law profession and come back and also work here on St. Martin. Now, it is my understanding, if we're talking about a strong judiciary, it is my understanding that there are so many challenges the last couple of years to get judges from the Netherlands and prosecutors to come and work on St. Martin. And why is that an understanding? The reason for that is because they're simply more aware and they're more aware of Curacao and Aruba, but also the fact that they're saying that they're also scared of the hurricane. Now, it might sound like a joke, but it is true. But that is what is my understanding. So we need to work towards a system where we can be able to encourage people to come to the island to work in the legal system. But also, the strong judiciary also is, what is also important is that those of us in the community that have a very strong and big platform, that we're very conscious of what we're saying, because then we reach people more quicker and faster. So if you are going to use your platform and really backslash the judiciary, then that is also not conducive to building a strong judiciary, because people will not have that trust and confidence in that judiciary. Now, I am not saying that you cannot be critical, because I myself am critical. I do not always agree with judges, but that's why I go and appeal. Lucky enough, I don't have to do that much to appeal cases. But what I'm saying is that we have to ensure, and that is also one of the fundamental things, that we ensure that our system, in having that vision, that we have a very strong judiciary. The same applies to a strong and competent civil service. So the civil registry, for instance, and other departments within government, it's important that they are strong and they are confident and educated in their field. So not because they have a certain qualification and they're working there, that means that that's okay, but it's important to continue with education to develop yourself and excel yourself into your career. And then a strong government and parliament. That is also very important as well. Now, a strong parliament, I do not only mean in terms of the participants and the quality of the participants, the quality of the persons that you elect into government, because that, in parliament, I'm sorry, because that is very important. But what I'm also talking about, and also to make sure that it is strong, it also relates to them having the resources. Because if we're looking, for instance, at government, how many lawyers do we have in the legal department of government? We probably don't have a lot. I don't dare to say how many we have, but it's not enough. But then we want to be able to create legislation, rules and legislations. But there's only so much that one department can do. So if we want to ensure ourselves that we have this strong democratic society in 2030 and beyond, we need to have the resources, not only the financial resources, but also the human resources to do so. And in the event we don't have that, then we need to look within, for instance, the kingdom, whether it's on Curacao, one of the other islands, or in the Netherlands as well, in order to help them, in order to have them over to St. Maarten to contribute to that effect. Now, talking about legislation, I passed it. The same applies. How many legislative lawyers do we have here in St. Maarten? That is something that is so important. Not every lawyer can function as a legislative lawyer because you have a specialization of that. I myself, I am not a legislative lawyer. It is my understanding that we may have one or two here on the, 2 or 3 on the island. I know we have one sitting between us right now, which is the Secretary General of the Parliament. And it's a specialization because it's very technical in drafting laws. I can read it and interpret it, but writing it, there's a technicality to it, and I don't have that specialization. It's important for us to be able to have as many of those as possible in order to get our legislation in place. It's not only government, but also the same applies to Parliament. But our legislation also must be current and relevant. Now, we have a lot of legislation on the book that are not current at the moment. And those are the things we need to review our legislation in the event we want to be able to make sure that it fits the current society. Let me give you an example. In my practice, as well as I know in the practice of other firms on the island, we are confronted with something that is ongoing, and it does not seem to find some sort of a solution. That is, for instance, when it comes to property. Now, we all know here on St. Maarten, we have the issue, the phenomenon of succession property, right? You and your family live on this piece of property that forms a bigger part of a property, which actually was the property of your great-great-great-great-grandparent. And now you actually want to have that piece of property that you were living on for 30, or your family that was living on for 30-odd years, in order to have it deeded to you. How do you go about that? That has proven to be very difficult over the last couple of years. Before, when you could have actually submit a petition to court, and you need to have an opposing party submitting that petition to court and saying, well, this case is against the concerned parties of this parcel of land. So, for instance, they had belong hebbende van perceel X. The court does not accept that anymore. The court wants for you to be able to itemize who the case is about, to identify who the case is going to be against. So all those defendants would need to be mentioned in there, or as many as possible. So how can you now know who these heirs are that were living on that property for many years ago? That is not possible. You go to the civil registry, ask them to do a family tree, and when they come with a family tree, you're going to see that there are so many heirs. Some of the heirs not living here, some deceased, some in the Dominican Republic, some in the Netherlands, the States, whatever it is, you don't even have an address. Fine, not having an address is not that bad because you can publicly serve. But when we're talking about a number of 100 heirs, and you only probably can identify like probably 50, what you have to do then is actually summon those 50 to court. And then you have to pay the summoning costs, the bailiff fees where that is concerned. And imagine having to pay that amount for 50 persons. Our people can't afford that. And then you're denying them that right to their property that they've been living on for many years. And what you're doing, in fact, is you're making their access to court also very difficult because they do not have the financial means. That is not right. And that's where I'm coming from when I say a fair and just society and having those legislations actually reviewed. How can we and what can we do in order to make that process legally possible and attainable for our people? That is something that we have to review in terms of legislation. Another one, for instance, is you can see when it comes to legal guardians, voogdij. In the Netherlands, it is possible for 2 persons to become the voogd for a child. On St. Maarten, if you look at the wording of the legislation, it's only 1 person because they refer to the voogd, not the voogden. So those are things in a modern society. If you have a couple that is married together, and then they want to, for instance, have the legal guardianship over a niece or nephew, then it's only one of them can legally actually be the voogd, based on how our legislation is formulated now. In the Netherlands, it is so formulated in your legislation that it is clearly that more than 1 person can do it. And then we have the question whether or not we should have legislation in Dutch or English. Now, that seems to be a touchy subject among some of the lawyers, and my understanding to the Raad van Advies is not too happy about that either. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm seeing they're here in the room, but they prefer legislation in Dutch. Now, all of us, we're legally trained in the Dutch language, so it's more easier indeed for us to draft legislation in Dutch, and you know the interpretation of it, and you can actually fall back on the legal history of things and where it comes from, and it makes it easier to draft it, as well as the fact that the judges are Dutch trained as well, so it's easy for them to understand it as well when it's in the Dutch language. I agree, I subscribe to that, but at the same time, I also subscribe to the fact that English should also be a possibility. Now, if it is that we do not, or we cannot have the legislation drafted in Dutch, then it should at least be translated into the English language. Because we have this principle or this saying that en ieder wordt geacht de wet te kennen, so and everybody should be deemed to know the law. But how can you hold that against me, hold me up to that standard if I don't understand the very same law that has been drafted and I'm supposed to abide by? So where that is concerned from government and parliament as well, that will we need that financial resource then as well in order to ensure that our legislation is also translated for our people to be able to understand that and know what they're up against and what they're getting into. And then we have the enforcement of the law. And we have legislation in place, but it's so important that they just not be on the books, but you should be able to enforce them and enforce them without any kind of discrimination whatsoever, meaning that it applies for each and every one. Important as well is for law enforcement is our border control. If we're talking about a safe society, we have to ensure that our border is safe. Who are we letting into St. Maarten? And from the port, from the airports, it is important. And that's why immigration legislation is very important. We're looking at the Minister of Justice. It's my understanding that the minister is also busy with that now and policies in place. That is very important. But also equally important is that we don't only look at our own borders here on St. Maarten in terms of the airport and the harbor, but in order to have an effective border control, I think it is important to also have that debate, that dialogue with our French counterparts, because that is so important, because you're going to be, like, for instance, trying to take a mop and drying up the water on this side, whereas the water is coming in from that other side as well. So it's important in having a sound immigration policy in place, immigration legislation, that you also include your French counterparts. A strong police force, that is also so important. If we're talking about a safe society, not only for us, but also for our tourists and the visitors that are coming into the island, that is so important. not only the amount of people, because the question is, do we have enough men and women in blue on the streets? Now, I'm saying blue. I'm seeing nowadays it's black and orange. They have a different uniform when they're on the street, but you get the impression what I mean. You get the idea what I mean. But it's important that we have enough men and women on the street that will be willing to serve and protect, to keep us safe. When we're in trouble, when we're in peril, the first person we call is the police. So we have to ensure that we have enough of those men and women on the street, but also treat them well. What do I mean? I'm not only talking about salary, but I'm talking about education, the secondary benefits. Those are things that are very important to them, because not only to them, but also to their family, who forms part of that very same society that we envisioning to have as a very strong society in 2030 and beyond. Education for the police is very important. The training, not only so that they can actually excel in their career. So it is not only the human resources where that is concerned, but also the financial resources. And then the prison. Prison is not only a building. That is something that is also very dear to me when I was actually on the Progress Committee, the police force, and also the prison. We can build a new prison, which we definitely need. The situation that is in right now, it is not equipped for prisoners to basically serve their sentence as it is. However, it's my understanding it's being worked on, Minister, but a prison is just not only the building. The prison is also the staff. The prison is the people. The same that applies to the police force in terms of the education for them to excel in the career, the same applies for the prison workers as well. But more important as well, or just as important as well, are those inmates. Important is that the inmates, that they are given some kind of an opportunity. That's why rehabilitation and resocialization is so important. Programs in the prison are important in the event when they want to come out, because sooner or later they are not staying in the prison, they're going to come back and return into society. And there's where you need to have to give them some sort of an alternative. That's why they have what you call the PPP, which is the public-private partnership. It's important to have that kind of a partnership from the public sector and the private sector, so when these inmates come out and return into society, that they have an opportunity. And then talking about an autonomous country, St. Maarten, and attaining all those goals that all those things that I just mentioned, it's important that you will be able to actually have those goals and attain those goals without any kind of intervention whatsoever. That's an autonomous country. St. Maarten, you are an autonomous country within the Kingdom of the Netherlands. You can do that as well. But of course, you will have certain challenges because, like I said, if you have a vision, you know where you are, you know where you want to get to, but you also should know where your weaknesses are and where your opportunities are. And when knowing where your weaknesses are, then you know where you can work on. One of our weaknesses, besides the financial resources, is also the human resources. And that's why where we have those weaknesses, we're cognizant of that we look for cooperation within the kingdom from our kingdom partners. And we have Curacao, we have Aruba and the Netherlands. We do not need to reinvent the wheel. We can just knock at the door and ask, okay, how have you done it in this particular instance? And see if they're willing to actually, provide that information and lend a helping hand. And we in turn can do that on other points as well. And when we do that, and we're looking at this new society that we aspire to become as government as well, you always need to handle with integrity. That is so important. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been assigned 20 minutes. I'm not sure if I'm there as yet or I'm over it, but it might seem as an uphill battle in attaining all these different goals that we aspire to have the society to be in 2030 and beyond. It might seem like a whole lot of work. But guess what? When we thought about becoming a country within the kingdom, that's also seemed very much far-fetched. But you worked towards it. And in 10-10-10, you attain country status. So although it might be difficult, it is very much possible. And actually, as our ancestors or old people would always say, where there's a will, there's a way. Let's do it, And we can aspire and have that good democratic and constitutional state that we aspire to have, with good wealth, with a unified society, and also with good and a resilient, sustainable economy. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
And that's a great way to begin the morning, huh? Talk about a great, great, great keynote address. Discussions needed on electoral reform, political will, legislation, drafting, the language, reinforcement, capacity building, resources, financial, but also human, and lifelong learning to increase our capacity as our society develops. And of course, there's always the weaknesses and the opportunities that we have to take into consideration as well. Lots of food for thought from our keynote speaker. Let's give him another round of applause, Mr. Jason Rogers. Thank you very much, Mr. Rogers. And of course, for the last 2 days, one of the things that we constantly heard about is the need for data. Data, 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 statistics. Whatever it is you're going to talk about, you have to be able to have statistics and data to back it up. Our next presenter this morning is going to present on reliable statistics as a prerequisite towards sound policy making in support of our national development. Our next presenter is Veronica Janssen Webster. After completing her education, her secondary education on St. Maarten, at the age of 17, she left her place of birth for Curaçao, where she completed VWO at the Maria Immaculate Lyceum. It was there that her love for maths and statistics manifested. She left for the Netherlands, completed her studies in mathematics, and upon returning to St. Maarten, Veronica joined the Department of Economic Policy and Research in the research section. She later transferred to the marketing research section at the Tourist Bureau. In 2008, she graduated top of her class as part of the first batch of civil servants who completed their bachelor's in public administration. Her thesis was nominated for the Peter Smits Prize, a prize for students of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and she received second place for her research of the elderly on St. Maarten. She was also the COO of the Electricity and Water Company, GEBE, for 4 of the most difficult years of the company's existence, through Hurricane Irma and with the onset of COVID-19. Her responsibilities included production, distribution, facilities, water control, and security. And together with her colleagues, she was able to rebuild, restore, and replenish the company before leaving after her contract ended after 4 years. On November 15, 2021, less than a year ago, Veronica returned to statistics, where she assumed the position of head of the statistics department. And she says her greatest challenge now is to guide the population census team to a successful representative census 2022. With her presentation, please help me welcome Veronica Janssen Webster.
Thank you. Good morning. It's on that screen, in the other screen. Yes.
Okay. Good morning again. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Protocol having been established, I stand here before you representing the Department of Statistics. For some of you who were at the Ombudsman presentation, you have seen some of the slides, but it has a different take today. And the idea is just to let you know that there are a lot of statistics here. I think this is better for me as well. There are a lot of statistics that are available. So today, I'm talking about the role of data and statistics for the national development, planning, monitoring, and evaluation. The importance of statistics. Statistics exist everywhere. If we look around today, we can say how many men, how many women are in here. There's so much that we can say just about this room. So data exists everywhere. We use this data and we generate statistics. When we generate the statistics, it's for data collection. You want to go back and see what was it like in 2008 when Wall Street had a crash. How was St. Maarten doing? How did we recover in 2009? Those kind of things. That's what you use the data collection over time for. And this dates back to centuries ago where people wrote down what happened so they could follow the trends. We use statistics for policy development. We use it for forecasting. We hear this a lot. St. Maarten is data bankrupt. I've been hearing it. As was mentioned by Mr. Tobias, when I came back home, I went to work in statistics. I worked in statistics in the Netherlands. I went to work in statistics here. And when I left the economic affairs departments, I still continue to follow. And I could never say I could not get data. But I know that it's difficult for people who do not know where to source the data, that the data exists and to get the data. But you can always contact us at the Department of Statistics. I don't want my colleague presenter to get offended, but I'm using the Ombudsman's newspaper article. I always use that because there was no data available at the time, the poverty line could not be established. And as a consequence, when the Ombudsman went to court against the 12.5% reduction for civil servants, it was turned down because it was said there was no data. So you got that 12.5%. And that's where you see the importance of having the data, the importance of all of us in helping to generate this data and to get all the data from all the different departments so that we can collect it, we can make our policies, and we can do our forecasting. And that's why the Department of Statistics is there to assist you with that. If you would like to see the updated statistics, this is our website. Sometimes I feel as if it's hard to find. You just put in stats.stmaartengov.org. You don't need to put in the https:// you just put in stats, and it will go automatically there. We also have a Facebook page, Department of Statistics, which is, to me, the easiest one for people to find. And you can find all the data. Data gathered by stat. We do the consumer price index, the CPI, and the inflation. That's, I think, the one that's most used. We get people right down to their landlord raise the rent. They want to see the CPI. The last one that was published is Q3. Q3 just finished last month. So we're really, when people say we need to have data on time, that's our goal. We are striving to have the data on time. Last year, Q3 was published in January or February. So we now have it already. We had it in October. July, August, September, yes, we had it in October. And we already went in the field for October now already too. And October has been done, but we publish quarterly. So by January, you'll have Q4. We do a tourism expenditure and satisfaction survey to find out more about our tourists. The last one that was published was the Q2. We just started writing Q3. The Tourism Pulse was published for Q3. The National Accounts is on time. It's scheduled for the first week of December, and it will be finished the first week of December. The labor force survey was due 2018. The household budget survey 2015, and the census was last done 2011. We do the labor force survey every 2 years. We are now going to go over to try to do it every year because it's an important one to get the unemployment rate. The household budget surveys every 5 years. We work with other entities. What I mentioned here was that 2018, June 2020, June 2020, and June 2021, what happened there was COVID, and nobody wanted, these are all household surveys. The ones that we have covered are the business surveys. Business was back to normal. We could go in and do what we needed to do, and we got the cooperation. But when you have people coughing and coming to visit you, even if they wear a mask, you don't want them to come to your home. And you also do not want to go in other people's home. And that's why 2020, 2021, those surveys were not done. And they were all the social surveys, the household surveys. So I don't know, how many of you know that we have a census ongoing now? Raise your hands, please. Okay, I feel a lot better again. It's a little bit more than at the ombudsman, so that's good, because we are trying to do the marketing. We have, I call it an army. We started out, we trained 110 people, but we have now 70 in the field. They are dropping, they are leaving for all kinds of reasons. It's not easy going and people are slamming the door in your face, people are insulting you, they're going to bust your head. It's not nice out there. But I must say, our census leader, Beulah Mangre, she just did a CARICOM census seminar, and all the other islands are facing the same thing. There's a resistance now from people where people question, oh, why do I have to answer all of these questions? But you just saw, especially the civil servants, what happened to you because there was no data. And guess what? The biggest group who do not participate are the civil servants. And some of them, if they know me, they'll tell the interviewer, don't tell Veronica, no, don't tell Veronica. I'm a colleague. You understand? But they run you. You'll see the L park up in front of their yard, and they will not do the census. The teachers, they will not do the census because they're upset with government. But if you're upset, if you do the census, government will know what are the issues so that we can do the policy development and the forecasting, etc. These are some of the questions. These are the household questions in there. It's a lot of questions. Who completed the census? It wasn't so bad, right? It went fast. And the person was nice to you. So it's not as daunting as people think it is. These are the questions. It's a lot of questions. And then the second part, see, bath and toilet facilities, why are you asking me that? There's one person when the interviewer did everything. When they got to bath and toilet, why you want to know how many bathrooms I have? No, get out of my house. But guess what? We had at least 8 out of the 3,700 households without toilets. We need to know that. We need to know that. We need to know that we still have places that don't have toilets. We need to know that there are places that don't have kitchens. We need to know that the appliances, we added in air fryer. We try to stay modern. Air fryer is the thing. No, everybody got an air fryer, want an air fryer, have it on their list. So when you put an air fryer in now, in 10 years when we do a census again, you will see where either maybe in between everybody gets sick from the air fryer, or the air fryer happened to really be the best thing. For me, it's the best thing. It is the best thing, and then in 10 years, it's like a normal thing to have in a household. A good one to look at is an air conditioning. 10 years ago, air conditioning was a luxury. Now you go to a home, you ask them what's the square meters of the home, 24 square meters, I mean like a box. But they got an air code, oh? 10 years ago, maybe not. But it's a norm now. So you see the trend. Electric cars, we ask that. Because now you might only have found 5, but in 10 years, we might find 50% has electric cars. So those are the things that we look at. We try to cover everything. The personal farm is the one they hate the most, but it goes really fast, especially the health. But when you cross health by sports, for instance, you can see some kind of a correlation. When you cross education by labor and your income, you can see different correlations. And I can't today, I would have wanted to, but I can't give you some of that kind of data. I have some things, but I can't give you a lot of that data because right now the data is skewed. Because when we did the pilot, we had a stratified sample, so we went this amount per district. So it was representative. But now some districts are overrepresented. We can't get in the gated communities. They don't want us in there. They don't want to answer no question. We are very private people here. We understand that you're private, but we need once every 10 years to come in and ask you questions so that we know more about our society and about our country. Now to talk about data, and when I see this is big data. This is, you see, whole computer server systems. STAT does not have its own server. So sometimes when I go to the analyst and I say, run this cross by that, and she's like, yeah, but I just did it. I said, well, where is it? She said, it's spinning. And you could stand up there like for sometimes like 30 minutes before it spins and opens. So we need the tools as a department. I mean, all departments. So this is some of the data. When I said we have the economic, so we have economic data, and then there's the social data that we're gathering now. When you look at the economic data, I just find that this is a nice slide to show out of all the different things. When we look at the consumer price index, what does it mean? When we say things gone up, I used to be able to buy my whole cat. It's true, you used to be able. 1973, I wonder if I was born then. 1973, you could get that whole cart there full. And now, you're lucky if you get two little things there for $20. It's true. Or you stay out of the supermarket like I do, because it's bad. So, but it's over the years, so those are the things that we see. That's when you gather data. This is not our slide, but I just love this slide. This was done by the former marketing researcher for the tourist office. This is a dashboard that shows you everything about tourism in 2021. So we gather the data, and we share it with them. We do the expenditure and satisfaction survey together with them, and then we give them the data, and especially when you have the young people in your department, they can make these nice things. We can do it too, but I mean, it's nice to have the fresh blood where you can see this. You see all of the information there. So that's why we gather data. Sorry, you can get the presentation, Clara. So this is the GDP. Now what you see here, up until 2013, the gross domestic product. Up until 2013, the one method was used, and then we started using a more robust method, a better method. We have the IMF, CARTAC, that's helping us. So there are some questions always about our GDP. We as a statistics department, we are very confident about our GDP calculations. We have had the former head of the Statistics Bureau, CBS, in the Netherlands. He did our peer review of the department, and he looked at our GDP calculation, and he said it was good. We are improving it all the time. We are doing a tourism satellite accounts, which will give you more information about domestic tourism, which will give you more information about people going to the French side, which we also have included in our tourism expenditure survey, and all of that is taken into account when we calculate our GDP. Why do you look at the GDP? Because you want to know the health, the pulse of your economy. This is like the first indicator that you look at when you want to know how are we doing. 2017, you see the dip in 2018. This was after the hurricane. And then you see that we were recovering nicely in 2019, and then we got COVID. And with COVID, when you bring in the numbers, you see that we had a record dip. It was projected to be 22% dip. We ended up on 17.9% dip. Double digits, never happened before like this. None of the other, what do you call that? nothing else affected us like this, but COVID. But we had to be on -20, -22, and that's the resilience of St. Maarten right there. And you can see us bouncing back now. We will have growth. We won't be back to 2016 levels because that's the goal for everything, but we are climbing back. Now with the social statistics, the one that I told you that we don't have, we're hoping we're going to get all of this from the census. So next year this time, so come and ask me about all of these things. We are going to have the answers. So we're going to have answers on education, on health, on employment, on all of this. We have some preliminary figures. We have a preliminary unemployment rate that hovers around 8.1, 8.2, 8.4%, which means it's dropping. We're doing a whole calculation in the census. So instead of asking you maybe 4 questions about employment in the census, we added in, were you employed in 2019? Were you employed in 2020? And then we say October 15, because we have to find a date. Totally annoying for you all. But we are doing that because we do not have the data for 19, 20, 21. We have some data for December 21. In December 21, I think it was like 10.4. So we want to see too, so it's dropping. Why did it drop? Were there efficiencies in the companies? So that's why you'll get more questions in your census. And then like, oh, too many questions. But every question has a reason. Then there's the health. We ask a whole lot of questions about non-communicable diseases, etc. So we will have an idea how healthy is St. Maarten. And in 2008, I remember the last one that I saw. I think there was one in 2015. My colleague Jaira is here she's representing the union today, but still, I'm calling her. The last health was what, 2015, Jai? 2015 was the last How Healthy is St. Maarten. But I can remember distinctly the one from 2008 where there was a mapping done. And you could see the people who perceived themselves as unhealthy, they were all lined up around the pond and in KB. Totally, let's say, expected. So now I would like to see, when I line them up now, if it's less, because we don't have the dump fires anymore. And that's statistics. That's what you want to project, the change over time. So employment, we have preliminary figures, but like I said, it's not representative, and we are doing the research. And then what was good to see, the youth unemployment has dropped. Remember we used to have numbers like 49%. What we are coming up now with, 15%, and I'm talking about over different intervals we are checking, it's not moving much, which means it shows you that the data is probably good. In education, I don't know if you all know, the majority of the people in St. Maarten have a secondary education. We are not as educated as we think at least that's how I thought we were. I thought we were a lot more bachelors and masters. We are primarily secondary, primary, unfinished primary, etc. It's something we need to know for education. That's another thing. When we look at the data, we have to be open and accept that we are going to hear some negative things about our country, because that is national development where we are going to build now and make sure we do it right and have a better company, a better country after. But we need to accept and know the things that are not going well, and maybe we need to have a lower, in Dutch, a drempel, a lower step for you to get to tertiary education. You know, I have more, so that you have more people. We will find out how many people own businesses. I always say St. Maarten is resilient. Remember when the people had what they call that, the money that they got there for COVID? You know, everybody went to Sunny Food and bought a bag of rice and cooked rice and peas and turned that money over, right? We not hand out and that's it. St. Maarten people, we resilient, we generate, we industrious, we don't sit back. So there are a lot of people who own businesses. It will come out in here. We have some figures on income and expenditure. Our expenditures in St. Maarten are very high, and you could see the population density. So on the income versus expenditure, This was, when we got this was like a scary slide, because if you look at the orange, that's your expenditure. And this was for the first 1,000 people that we interviewed, and the blue is their income. See, some of them, the income start over here. They don't even have an income. But look at this expenditure. So we asked, so how you doing that? When the landlord come, closing the door. GB got a problem now, so we ain't paying. By the time they find out, we just not paying. So that's what's happening. And I always like to say, and my SG want me how to say it, some of these people over here paying for these. But I ain't supposed to use no genders, but that's what's happening. So, but one thing you can see, one thing you can see with this, that's why we have a trend line in here. The black line is a trend line. You see where the costs remain the same for these and for those, the cost, the expenditure is similar. It's not that much different. They probably have 3 air codes over here, they got a 1. But the cost, this is what is needed. And we have the calculation of it, and we gave the calculation in the poverty one for the ombudsman. But like I said, the numbers now, I can't trust them, so, but I know the number, how much it's supposed to be. But we can't divulge that. And then, here we are showing you can see it better on those other screens. This is the income. So the green is more green, more income, more money. And then the white is, let's say you have less income. So you see here, you can see the pockets. This is KB. You can see the pockets of low income there. Town, down street, the pockets of low income over the bank. Some places in the region, and the size of the circles is the size of the household. We had households of 15 people, 3 generations, a 2-bedroom house. The piece of land is 200 square meters. So the house, is a little bit less. So we have those situations. We also have 1 person or 2 people living in 400 square meters of house alone. So it's a lot of differences, and all of that can come out here. Oh, and then one thing that was remarkable to me, we always talk, and I always talk too, about the lack of housing. But our interviewers found so many empty houses. Even if the houses are available for $150, and we found $150 houses, and they were looking good. They cannot afford it, and they're going to live with their mother, their sister, their brother, their aunt, cousin, and we even check that. What is the composition of the household? Are you even related? The other thing we ask, and this is a bright point here, the quality of life. The darker color is a 10. So you find your quality of life in St. Maarten is a 10 versus the white where you say it's bad quality of life, I don't like this place at all, etc. And we see here where the majority is still very positive about St. Maarten. Again, our resilience. That's, I'm nearly done anyway, Angelique, but I just wanted to save some time. So we echo the sentiments of the National Development Vision. See, they said, make us autonomous entity. I am so glad that this document was approved, Miguel. We are good to go, because now we have an approved document that says we should be an autonomous entity with greater access to collect essential data needed for sound decision making. That is the best thing I've ever heard. B, we need to improve our, to get qualified staff in our infrastructure. I need staff yesterday. We need to, the number 2, human resources, and to centralize the use of the statistical instruments, right? Everybody, I think every department should have a statistical analyst. You'll see it come up just now. But this whole system that they're talking about here, this is called the National Statistical System, and we are working on that. It needs legislation. We just heard about current legislation, the statistical ordinance and the ordinance for 𝒂𝒄𝒉, which is census, is so outdated. They talk about paper interviews, etc. We need updates. And the third point from the National Development Vision here is, this. And this is actually called Beyond GDP. So don't only use your GDP to monitor your country, but you can have a country with a high GDP, but everybody is unhappy, which we don't have, because you see our quality of life index, they are looking nice right now. But beyond GDP, let's look at how people feel, how their health is, how their wellness is in your country, their education. Then you can say you have a better GDP. So include the capabilities, so the capabilities approach. Okay, and then, so like I mentioned, I would like everyone to do their part. Participate in an open and honest manner in the data gathering process, not only with the census, but because we are data bankrupt, they are going to come next year. The police wants to do a survey. Next year, VSR wants to do a survey. I just saw somebody send something about a survey about housing. So there are a lot of surveys. They are going to come all the time. Do your part so we can get this information. And every department, like I said, should have an analyst in their department. Government sent out a scribe and an ad about doing for analysts. Send someone from your department. You need to know your figures. Thank you, and a happy St. Martin's Day.
Thank you. My boss always said, what gets measured gets done. And data speaks. And without data, talk is cheap. So if you're going to go and defend anything, you better have the data to back it up. And it's good to see what the department is doing. We got to thank Veronica for a very frank and open discussion. We know the challenges. We feel your pain. But what you're doing is a very important task. So keep up the good works. Our next presenter is going to talk about fiscal responsibility. And he is a tax specialist, Mr. Quincy Lunt. Mr. Lunt is a tax specialist for the Dutch Caribbean jurisdictions with a particular focus on providing workable solutions for tax matters on the island of St. Martin, his country of residence. Areas of expertise consist of obtaining tax relief for corporate group restructurings, the use of the St. Martin tax-exempt company, utilizing various tax incentives for inbound investment projects, including tax holidays, tax optimization of employee benefits, preparing tax due diligence reports, and assisting with tax audits, as well as avoidance of double taxation on inter-island trade, and so much more. With his presentation on fiscal, no, I said responsibility, it's fiscal sustainability. Please help me welcome Mr. Quincy Lunt.
Protocol being observed. I bid you welcome. Listen to this presentation and try to obtain more understanding for this rather abstract subject, being fiscal sustainability. I want to start with a definition so that we understand what is the goal, what are we looking for, and what we're trying to accomplish. It's the ability of the government to meet its obligations without requiring debt relief or accumulating arrears, and maintaining the public finances at a credible and serviceable position over the long term. So you see, I underscored the obligations and the arrears. It is not only the financial obligations, but also other duties of the government will be impacted if there's not sufficient financing or fiscal space. The other item is arrears. you could accumulate some arrears as well in meeting the financial obligations, payments that need to be made, but also projects that don't move forward because there's not sufficient space. The tools that the government has to influence the path of the economy are the fiscal policies. So through government spending and tax policies, the government can steer the economy in the direction that they would prefer. Better performing economies should lead to improved public finances and higher gross domestic product, the GDP, which was just mentioned by VJ in her presentation. So you have automatic stabilizers and you have discretionary fiscal policy. The discretionary fiscal policy, now you can divide that in two different areas or strategies, and that's the expansionary fiscal policies versus the contractionary fiscal policies. The word says it already, the expansionary is supposed to enable the economy some room to growth, and which will improve the GDP as well. Contractionary would be the other way around. I put a critical question here. How is it different? How is this different for small island developing states? The question is relevant when you look at other ratios and indicators that are being used in when dealing with public finances. And you know, the small island developing states are challenged with the geographical position in the middle of the sea, exposed to all type of risks and natural disasters, also very dependent of the international traffic, tourism. So to shorten it, the question to this answer is it still small island developing states have the same principles and the same policies should be applied when trying to design sound fiscal policies. So a definition again, I like to go back to the basics so that we understand what we're talking about. So as I mentioned, the expansionary fiscal policies, it increases the level of the aggregate demand. The aggregate demand is the demand for your gross domestic product. So whatever services and products that your country are producing, what is the demand for that? So when you increase the level for that, you would usually have a better performing economy at a higher GDP. Now, examples of expansionary fiscal policies are when you increase consumption by raising disposable income through cuts in personal income taxes. So people like to hear that there will be cuts in personal taxes so that there's more disposable income. Then when those situations, we as citizens would know that the government is applying expansionary fiscal policies. To the contrary, you have also contractionary fiscal policies. There's where you want the level of the aggregate demand to reduce, bring it down, and try to limit it within boundaries. One would ask, when do you want to limit the GDP, the growth of the GDP or the growth of the economy? That's in the case when you have inflation. Then it's when you need to make sure that the expenses, that the level of the aggregate demand goes down. So you decrease the consumption. Examples are mentioned here. Decreasing consumptions by reducing disposable income through increased rates of personal income tax. I think you would see this more often in additional levies, but not necessarily an increase in the income tax rates. So what's the strategic approach according to the National Development Vision? To ensure long-term fiscal sustainability, the government will engage in forecasting of future revenues and the liabilities, corresponding liabilities. decreasing the debt levels, and improving fiscal position. Now, this is important or more interesting. As I mentioned, it's an abstract subject to talk about, but we try to make it more tangible and understandable to everybody in attendance. So the decreasing of the debt levels, of course, will improve the fiscal position. Automatically, it allows for more fiscal space. More fiscal space, you can pay off certain debts, and all of that is interconnected with each other. Other element of our strategic approach is improving potential for economic growth by investing in funds in productive sectors. Here, the question when I was reading this through, the question is, are we allocating funds that were allocated to something else now to more to the productive sectors? Those are questions that you could pose in conversations with civil servants and everybody involved together with designing of the national development vision. So the legislation is important to attain the fiscal sustainability because we need effective laws and efficient tax regime. That efficient tax regime should allow us to be better able to collect the taxes, right? And why is this relevant? Or we have some figures also to make it more tangible again. Tax revenues in St. Maarten are approximately 18% of the GDP, whereas the Caribbean average is around 21% of the GDP. So that already brings you to, you know, we are up below average. It's not too far below, but we could do better. Now, if the tax revenue collection would have kept pace with nominal GDP growth over the last 4 years, there would have been additional fiscal space of approximately 55 million. So that again makes it tangible. Okay, so if we were in pace, we would have had more fiscal space, and we know the amounts also involved with it. The debt to GDP ratio. This is one of the indicators that I mentioned that you want to know if it still is still sufficient, accurate for a small island development state as St. Maarten is. So the debt to GDP ratio of St. Maarten is at 36% and falls well below the 50% that it should be in order to apply for IMF borrowings. This poses a significant challenge for the government because now we have to, besides all of this commitment to a balanced budget, cover the current expenses and expenditures, complying with the future debt obligations, and all the while also looking at the risk premium asset involved with obtaining financing from abroad when your GDP ratio is not the healthiest. So in conclusion, I could say the National Development Vision concludes that the fiscal sustainability, until fiscal sustainability is achieved, the fiscal policies in St. Maarten will continue to be stagnant and show contractionary traits on the medium term. So as I mentioned it before, right, the contraction, less government spending because there's not sufficient space as well, but also because you need to look at the rate of inflation. So if you ask my opinion about the National Development Vision and the feasibility of it, I think it's feasible. And I think if all involved put their part, contribute their part, apply the fiscal prudence, we can accomplish this together, this vision 2030 and beyond. But if you want, I could read it too, and I focus more on the tax compliance and the increased tax revenues that would result from that, allowing us to pay off certain debts if indeed sufficient taxpayers contribute to their fair share in this whole part of the public finances. So indeed, I will close off with encouraging words for the team of civil servants and government representatives that have been working on this plan. Let's go for it and enjoy your day further.
Thank you very much. Another round of applause for Mr. Quincy Lunt on fiscal sustainability. And again, there you hear about the need for legislation, legislation, legislation. As the third presenter and the third one that mentioned legislation and the need for more legislation. Our fourth presenter this morning is going to present on St. Maarten is effectively and decisively governed. And our fourth presenter is Gwendolyn Mossel. Dynamic and assertive are descriptive for Gwendolyn Mossel. Ms. Mossel obtained her master's degree in notarial law at the Radboud University in Nijmegen in the Netherlands. During this time, she also gained invaluable experience during a 6-year tenure working as a candidate notary at the notary office in the Netherlands. In 2008, Gwendolyn Mossel made the decision to return to St. Maarten. On her return, she served alongside then Lieutenant Governor Franklin Richards as legal advisor in the cabinet of the Lieutenant Governor, where she had the privilege of advising on matters pertaining to immigration law. From 2010 to April 2015, Ms. Mossel held the position of Policy Coordinator at the Immigration and Border Protection Services and as acting head of the Admittance and Residence Department. In May 2015, she took up a new role as legal advisor at the Bureau Ombudsman, and in 2017 was appointed Substitute Ombudsman. 2 years later, Ms. Mossel was sworn in as the second Ombudsman of St. Maarten before the President of Parliament, and she's serving for a term of 7 years, which began January 1st, 2019. And in February of this year, she was elected as a director of the Caribbean and Latin American region of the International Ombudsman Institute. With her presentation, St. Maarten is effectively and decisively governed. Please welcome Ms. Gwendolyn Mossel.
Protocol having been established, pleasant good morning. And I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to also be part of this historic moment. And I hope that my presentation will be of a great contribution to the goals that we have set out to reach in our vision. In keeping with the theme, St. Maarten effectively and decisively governed, I will shed the Ombudsman perspective on where we are at now and where we're supposed to be. And I will use the goals to reflect that. The goal 23, goal 24, and goal 25. I will start with an integrated government, a whole government, and strengthened capacity of government institutions. I'm going to split the two, an integrated government, a whole government. What does that look like? The definition of integrated is in which many different parts are closely connected and work successfully together. government as a unit cannot function properly if the ministries work in silos. Important is sharing of information between departments, ministries, cooperation during decision-making procedures, cooperation in execution of policies is key for cooperation. What does lack of cooperation look like if the ministries would not cooperate? How would it look? Based on complaints that have been filed recently, I am just giving an example in order for the understanding of cooperation to come. Look, I'm going to follow what Jason said. He said, you have to be careful with what you say, but sometimes you have to be critical, and you would have to say what you say, but it is for the benefit of us all. Okay, so based on complaints that were filed against the Ministry of 𝒐𝒉 and the Ministry of 𝒕𝒐𝒔, regarding garages that cause hindrance within a residential area based on the fumes, traffic congestion. We did an investigation, and we also had a meeting with heads of departments of the Ministry of 𝒐𝒉 and the Ministry of 𝒕𝒐𝒔, and as well with the Ministry of Justice. And yeah, in that meeting, it was established that the Ministry of 𝒕𝒐𝒔, that there is a lack of cooperation between the Ministry of 𝒕𝒐𝒔 and the Ministry of 𝒐𝒉. The Ministry of 𝒕𝒐𝒔 follows their policies. And when they issue a business license, for instance, for a garage, they do not look to see whether a hindrance permit or a building permit is issued. On the other hand, you also have the Ministry of 𝒐𝒉, when they issue a building permit for a garage, that they don't look to see if the area that they are giving that building permit for is also suitable to get the hindrance permit based on the location. What we have established is that the Ministry of �𝒐𝒔 looks at, well, they have a REP, Residential Economic Policy. Based on that policy, they do not issue any business licenses for garages that are in a residential area. However, when we, and that is based on, they look at the zoning. Now, 𝒐𝒉 is the one that is in charge of zoning. They have a draft zoning plan, and as it appears that the interpretation of residential, compared to 𝒐𝒉 doesn't always coincide. Where 𝒕𝒐𝒔 says it's residential, 𝒐𝒉 said it is commercial. But then we also have the problem that it is a draft, and this draft has been by Parliament for I don't know how long. It is very important for us to have the zoning in order and to have an alignment with the zoning. As a result, we see that, we also see that garages are not operating from the place for the business license, but they're operating from another area. And that has also been an issue. So what we see is that because of the lack of cooperation, communication between the two ministries, we have garages that are operating without a business license, without a hindrance permit, and without a building permit. I do have to say that the ministry has stated that they will revisit, the Ministry of ROMI will revisit these garages and see which one is eligible for a hindrance permit. And the Ministry of TIAT said that they would revisit all the addresses, whether those companies, businesses are really operating from the address that coincides with the business license. The other part, strengthened capacity of government institutions. We all know that capacity is an issue. However, it is also important for civil servants to be well equipped to be able to do their job effectively. The Ombudsman held a workshop with civil servants, top civil servants in 2016, and a document called Bottlenecks and Solutions was established, whereby the civil servants identified the various bottlenecks and solutions. And one of the main bottlenecks was proper implementation of the LEOL, and that is when it relates to the authority of the Cabinet of the Ministers versus the SGs, signing management agreements between the minister and the head of the executive bodies, authority of the SG, the daily running, leading the ministries, versus the head of departments, the executing body, and also the support that General Affairs offers to these ministries. Most of the workers have also identified that they would function better if they have proper information to relate to the public, if there is no political interference, consistency, transparency in the execution of policies, and the required authority to be taken, to take certain actions. And then these are some of the solutions that were provided by the civil servants to enforce the rules, improve communication and cooperation between SGs, uniformity in policies and procedures to improve efficiency. This document, Bottlenecks and Solutions, was also given to the Council of Ministers. This is 2016. And yeah, we really have to take it serious, listen to our civil servants in order to have a proper and effective service to the public. The next goal is fostering good governance and integrity. Good governance is a precondition for meeting the challenge of, among others, reducing poverty. My colleague already spoke about the Ombudsman having a roundtable discussion. We are hearing about the lack of data. We have also identified that in our reports, and also the Constitutional Court alluded to that. But in our roundtable discussion, this was with government departments and the civil society, and the discussions actually prove that there is data. And that is what actually the head of the statistics also said. So government has a lot of data at its disposal, but the problem is what is being done with it. How are we utilizing this? There is, again, no coordination, no exchange of information, cooperation between the ministries and departments. And, you know, the data should be centralized, and to have policy workers to look at it in order to make the right policies that will lead to the reduction of poverty, reducing poverty. So that is something that is, when we talk about data, let's hold data dear to our heart. It is there, but let's utilize it in the proper manner. Goal 25, providing efficient public services. If you look at that picture, we see that we are trying to fix it, we are putting a Band-Aid, but it's just not happening. I'm a critical friend, so I can give this example. For instance, to reach the government building is not easy. We have not 1, not 2, 3, 4, I don't know how much numbers. How much? 8? We have 8 numbers, and yet it is very difficult to reach the government building. The role of the Ombudsman is to promote good governance and to improve the service to the public. The Ombudsman uses standards of conduct, principles of propriety. These are 3 top standards of proper conduct that are being violated by the government. We have active and adequate information provision. Active and adequate information provision means that administrative bodies are required to actively and upon request provide adequate information to the public. This implies, among others, the obligation to answer letters from citizens, send in an acknowledgement of receipt, and an interim notice if the handling of the request will take longer than anticipated. Our number 1 recommendation in almost all of our investigations is implement a system to ensure that requests, letters, incoming complaints, and grievances are being handled within a reasonable term or a term specified by law. No response, no acknowledgement or of receipt, or no reason given for tardy response is a serious violation of propriety. And this really needs to be improved post haste. Some departments, I must say, they have implemented an automatic reply, which is very good, but it's only good if you follow up on it. If you don't follow up on it, then it is just like a non-response. The public prefers a motivated no than no answer or to be in uncertainty. Actively providing the public with information reduces the burden on departments. An example for the tax department, for instance, it is good to provide information at the back of the assessment to explain to people, if they would like to object, how they should object, and how it works. People often don't understand the tax system. We have the tax administration and we have the receiver's office. We all think it's one and the same. They are not, and they pretty much work differently. If you file an objection, you would have to also ask for a deferral, make a deferral request stating that, hey, I need to halt my collection. I have put in an objection. If you don't do that, receiver's office will continue to send assessment and they want their money. So, but if you don't know that, then you're stuck and then they end up by the ombudsman again. So it's important to provide that adequate information to the public, and it also relieves the department. I know it's late. I will skip some of my examples that I have. One more example is, for instance, also the inspections departments. Often when they do inspections, they do not involve the person whom it concerns. And they do the inspection. They sometimes don't even make a report. We have to ask where the report is, and they would just tell us what happened. And the person doesn't even know that they came or what the outcome was. So that is important. Get the person involved, get the public involved when it pertains to inspections. Oh, sorry. Quickly, promptness. There's a legal time frame within the law that we're supposed to respond. Often, government does not respond within the legal time frame, and of course, you will say, hey, you could go to court. But in actuality, that is not the way it should be, because you don't want the public to have to go to court. It is very costly, and you expect the government to give an answer within the legal time frame. Only when it's an exceptional situation that you will say, I cannot make it in time. So that is something that we really have to look into. Also, the fact that oftentimes, be it by word of mouth, they are being told it's in the pipeline, it's by the minister, the advice is on his desk. So people wait and they expect an answer. And then the time frame for them to go to court also passes. And the court is keihard, as they would say, that you are not ontvankelijk if you go past the time. So those are things that I think that we really need to look into. Reasonable time is 30 days, and in matters of urgency, 3 to 7 days. Adequate organizations of services. Proper service includes organizing the administration in a manner that is lawful, effective, transparent, accessible, and to provide prompt service. See if I have an example. One of the main issues, of course, is that persons give a request, a letter, and when they come to inquire, they are asked to send a letter again because they don't have the letter, they can't find the letter, there's nothing in the system. Even with the ombudsman, with her complaints, with sending emails, we are asked to resend documents, and that is something that should not be. Archiving should be in place. We should have our systems in place, and that is an important aspect that also really needs great attention. Government is expected to be open and clear, respectful, involved, and result-oriented. We are not there yet, but this is a place where we say, hey, this is where we are at, and we will be working towards where we want to go. We cannot reach there without seeing where we are first. So, as our Prime Minister stated on Tuesday, the National Development Vision will unlock St. Maarten's potential, and I do believe that. And I would like to end with a quote from Friedrich Nietzsche. He who would learn to fly one day must first learn to walk and run and climb and dance. One cannot fly into flying. Thank you.
One step at a time, but we'll get there. Let's give the Ombudsman another round of applause for her presentation. And those were the presentations for this morning. We're going to take a short break, and when we get back, we'll have the panel discussion. We'll address the goals 18, 23, 24, and 25. We'll get presentations on those, and then you'll have the opportunity, of course, to pose your questions and enter the panel discussion as well. So for now, we're going to take a 15-minute break, 15, and then we'll continue. Okay, we're going to now have the panel discussion, and I'd like to introduce the moderator for this part of the morning. Please help me welcome Lisanne Charles.
Thank you very much, and it's been an honor, I have to say, these last 3 days listening to all of the presenters, getting all of the information. It's really been insightful, and I'm sure that many others would echo the same sentiments. We're going to continue now, indeed, with the panel presentations and discussion. So we're going to have, first of all, Ms. Gumbs, we're going to have Ms. Hickinson, and we're going to have Mr. Huckins, who are going to present on goals 18, 23, 24, and 25 of thematic, or theme number 3. So we're going to start, first of all, with the presentations. All 3 persons are going to come up, they're going to present, then they're going to go ahead and sit on the panel, after which they will get some questions, and also, I hope, some questions from you. So please listen attentively, jot down your questions. Because, of course, we have time restraints, we're going to have about 6 questions, and then we're going to go over into the other part of the program. So please bear in mind, if you raise your hand and you want to pose a question, you'll have about 30 seconds to do so before the presenters will get to answer. So we're going to go ahead and start with Ms. Angelique Gumbs, who is going to present on goal number 18, which is national security measures. Ms. Gumbs is a career civil servant with 14 years professional experience working for the government of St. Maarten. In 2018, Ms. Gumbs was appointed as the manager of the Department of the Interior and Kingdom Relations, Ministry of General Affairs. Ms. Gumbs has had the privilege of working for various ministries on various levels. She has a degree in social work and degrees in social science and criminology, and is currently pursuing a law degree at the University of Curaçao. Being the manager of the policy department within the Ministry of General Affairs, Ms. Gumbs believes that policy development is an iterative process to produce continuous improvements. Ms. Angelique Gumbs, the podium is now yours.
Good morning. Let me see if I know how to activate.
It's not.
Yeah,
It's not only. Yes.
All right. So, good morning again. Protocol already being established. I will delve right into my presentation as I only have 10 minutes, and I know Andrea will wave that red flag at me. So, as mentioned, my name is Angelique Gumbs, and I'm the manager of the Department of the Interior and Kingdom Relations. And my presentation today, I will highlight the Department of the Interior and Kingdom Relations, Goal 18 of the National Development Vision, the risk profile of St. Maarten, the disaster management St. Maarten policy perspective, and ongoing initiatives, disaster risk management, and a conclusion. Department of the Interior and Kingdom Relations. Here you see our mandate. This is basically the task of the department that we execute on a daily basis. The Department of the Interior and Kingdom Relations is a policy department within the Ministry of General Affairs. So we are responsible for, 1, support national development directions, including a well-balanced cooperation with foreign parties. That's why we're here today, national development. Recruit, contract, support, and maintain financial donors for St. Maarten. This might be familiar to some. It is the EU projects that we handle, where funding comes from the European Union. Initiate policies and take the lead in proposing laws and directives aimed at obtaining a high quality of public governance. This is good governance, in other words, and the presenter after me, Ms. Nikema Hickinson, will go into this aspect. Promote sound and well-balanced relations within the kingdom. This is kingdom relations. The Department of Interior and Kingdom Relations does the Kingdom Council of Ministers preparation agenda for decision-making of the Council of Ministers of St. Martin. The fifth is coordinate, develop, execute, monitor, and evaluate integrated development cooperation projects and programs. Cooperation projects are projects that we execute in collaboration with, for example, the French side. Promote adequate arrangements and solid preventative and repressive curative provisions for defense and national physical safety. What is this? Basically, disaster management. So goal 18 is national security measures. Improved national security measures are in place to protect the lives and safety of the people of St. Martin. The vision talks of emergency preparedness, economic security, ecological security, physical security, critical infrastructure security, social security, and political security. Goal 18 falls under theme 3, a safe, secure, decisive, and independent nation. Just to highlight some other goals under theme 3, strong justice system, modernized legislation, Mr. Rogers went into that, the impact of climate change, and last but definitely not least, food security. We saw yesterday with Mr. Wyatt, who was also present, who indicated that we all needed to take a break to eat. So, National Development Vision Goal 18. Again, national security measures. Improved national security measures are in place to protect the lives and safety of the people of St. Martin. So what is that? That is ecological security. And ecological security relates to climate change. Climate change is considered to be the biggest threat to St. Martin as a small island developing state. It is actually the biggest threat to mankind currently. Being cognizant of this, the National Development Vision identifies this as a goal to be achieved to protect the lives and safety of the people of St. Martin. So let's look at the risk profile of St. Martin. This is not new. We all know this. We are located in the Atlantic hurricane belt. That's one of our biggest threats because with climate change, we can expect increase in the intensity and frequency of natural disasters. Another component of the risk profile of St. Martin is high population density. We are a small island with an extremely large population. I believe we are number 230 on the World Index of highest populated countries. Low-lying areas. This is also not new to us. We had the floods of Saturday, I believe, where certain areas simply became not accessible. Single economic pillar, tourism. We saw yesterday quite extensive presentations from the director of the central bank, who indicated that we are not yet returned to our pre-Hurricane Irma and Maria tourist figures. Unplanned and unmaintained infrastructural development. This is also not new to us. We see development happening all over, and as the Ombudsman just said, zoning remains a challenge. Limited human capacity and financial resources. The Department of Interior and Kingdom Relations, 5 persons. Okay. So before I get into the projects that we are executing as a government to reach the goals of the National Development Vision, especially Goal 18, let me just highlight the disaster management policy perspective of St. Martin. Landsverordening rampenbestrijding, landsbesluit houden de algemene maatregelen tot vaststelling van het rampenplan St. Martin. Landsverordening uitzonderingstoestand Sint Maarten, Landsverordening inrichtingen en organisatie, organisatiebesluit, ministerie van Algemene Zaken. This is the legislation that governs disaster management. Rough translation, National Ordinance Disaster Management, Decree enacting general measures, disaster management, National Ordinance State of Emergency, National Ordinance on the Structure and Organization of Government, and the Organizational Decree of the Ministry of General Affairs. The structure is there. The legislative basis is there. And as Mr. Rogers indicated, we just need to update, but we have enough to start. Disaster management based on these legislative products are divided into two areas. The first being the operational and emergency response, and the second being the policy and legislative environment for disaster management. The operational response is very known to everyone. I think that is when we react, and everyone here of the infamous EOC that has been activated. I think we had that over the weekend as well, where a person was like, where's the EOC? The EOC is only activated once there is a disaster. And the legislation also defines what is a disaster. The Prime Minister then assumes the supreme command, and that system is also designed that way for a specific reason. It is to ensure there's coordination and collaboration with the main stakeholders that need to respond to the effects of disaster management. Then we have the second component of disaster management, as I mentioned, is the policy and legislative environment. This component pertains to the remaining phases of disaster management, therefore not the emergency response phase, but the phases of prevention, mitigation, preparedness, and recovery. However, over the last years, because we had quite a relatively long time of calm, these phases were not seen as much as priority as other areas for development. So as a policy department of the Interior and Kingdom Relations, we needed to identify why and how we could challenge this so to solve the problem. And there I will go into the projects that are underway. Yeah. Okay. So we currently have 3 projects that are ongoing to support Goal 18. The first is the operationalization of the Office of Disaster Management based on a comprehensive disaster management approach. The second is the design, operations, and maintenance of early warning system in St. Maarten. And the third, fostering resilient crisis management. I will start with the first project, which is the operationalization of the Office for Disaster Management. Currently, we have no Office for Disaster Management. What we do have, based on the legal basis that already exists, is a section disaster management that falls under the National Disaster Coordinator, who's also the fire chief. This section, as mentioned, capacity is an issue, consists of 1 person, literally 1 person. So the aim of this project is to establish that Office of Disaster Management. The establishment of that office includes the establishment of the processes that would relate to that office, the tasks, roles, and responsibilities of that office, and moreover, the establishment of a structure to ensure that disaster risk management becomes a 365 days a year effort, and not just an activation of an EOC in the event of an impending disaster. The office will then focus on the various phases of disaster management and not the emergency response. The project also includes the development of a complete business plan for the Office of Disaster Management. We are already busy with the function book, to which that is now on its way to the vetting of the legal process, and then will be sent in the routing to have it approved. The second initiative towards achieving Goal 18 relates to the design, operation, and maintenance of an early warning system in St. Maarten. According to the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, an early warning system is an integrated system of hazard monitoring, forecasting, and prediction. Disaster risk assessment, communication, and preparedness activity systems and processes that enables individuals, communities, governments, businesses, and others to take timely action to reduce disaster risks in advance of hazardous events. Early warning is not completely new for St. Maarten. Previously, we had a siren system where 7 sirens were installed, including in the Philipsburg area. However, that system, the technology, is no longer in use, and after Hurricanes Irma and Maria, it was determined that the systems were too much damaged to be repairable. However, before we get into having a new system or a new siren system, we must recognize that technology is not the first step. Because we can have all the technology that we want, but if we don't have the necessary protocols in place, messaging in place, standardized messaging, standard operating procedures, as well as exercises surrounding the technology, it defeats the purpose. So as such, this project will focus on the development of those protocols of mass notification, standard messaging, and in different languages. We saw in the COVID-19 pandemic that government ensured that messaging went into different languages, such as Spanish and Creole. Another aspect of this project is a knowledge, attitude, practice survey. That survey will be done amongst the population to ensure what type of messaging also influences the population. You can have a siren system, but if I hear the siren once, it doesn't mean that I automatically know what to do. The project will also focus on the various layers of warning. Part of it is also cell broadcast, which is also currently being looked into. For the mere and simple fact that the siren system might not reach all the communities that are needed, such as a siren system in the Philipsburg area will not reach, for example, the Middle Region area. Signage will also be included in this project in areas that are low-lying and the tsunami zone. So this project is basically a comprehensive project that approaches early warning system not just from technology, but moreover from ensuring a holistic framework for the execution of this project to be able to actually warn your citizens. The third initiative of government is the Fostering Resilience Crisis Management. So I will not go too far into this one before I get my own red flag. However, I will highlight from this project, which we are very excited for, is that this project focuses on the creation of a center of excellence. A center of excellence at the Office of Disaster Management where certified courses will be given so that basically a wider network of responders for disaster management can be created. This wider network will not just be internal persons, but also external persons that are interested in disaster management, as well as should be mandatory, such as businesses, schools, NGOs, to be aware of not just the disaster management structure, but also how to respond. This way, we create a network that in the event of a disaster, government is not strained for capacity and not strapped for finding personnel that can assist with the execution of tasks. So I'm back to Goal 18 again. National security measures. Improved national security measures are in place to protect the lives and safety of the people of St. Maarten. Those 3 projects that I mentioned on the heels of COVID-19 pandemic, while we're still reeling from the destruction caused by Hurricanes Irma and Maria, are the first steps that we are taking to ensure, to protect the lives and safety of the people of St. Maarten. Theme 3, Goal 18, speaks to our existence as a small island developing states. St. Maarten 2030 is then envisioned to be a safe, secured, decisive, and independent nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gums. So as we can see, Angelique spoke again about the connectiveness of everything in order to ensure security, and also the importance of kingdom relations at this time in fulfilling the objectives and the objectives of the thematic area 3. So right now we're going to move right into our next speaker, who is going to speak on goals 23, 24, and 25, or facets of them, and that is Ms. Nekima Hickinson. Ms. Hickinson is a career civil servant also with 18 years professional experience working for the government of St. Maarten. She is currently employed as a senior policy advisor for the Department of Interior and Kingdom Relations and holds the portfolio Donor Relations. She also works on collaboration and social projects such as the well-known 𝒚𝒐𝒏𝒈𝒕𝒉𝒆𝒏𝒊𝒏𝒈 project to reduce the use of single-use plastic on the island, which is called St. Maarten Plastic Free by 2023. She had the privilege to work for various ministries and gain experience in different positions on different levels. She holds a master's degree in labor economics for development and a bachelor's in public administration. She will again speak on goals 23, 24, and 25, which are integrated government and strengthened capacity, good governance, and the efficient public services. Ms. Hickinson, the podium is yours.
Protocol having been established, good morning. My name is Nekima Hickinson, and today I have the pleasure of highlighting initiatives that promote and support the sentiments of the NDV in fostering an integrated government and strengthening our capacity as we enhance and provide good governance and efficient public services. Goals 23, 24, and 25 undoubtedly reflect the objectives of the policy platform, and hence that is the reason why we chose the policy platform as the topic for this presentation. I'll begin the presentation with a brief introduction of the platform, the structure of the platform, our accomplishments as a collective body, highlight our initiatives that were birthed out of the platform, and last but certainly not least, touch on the future and some of our other initiatives. In 2019, the Department of Interior and Kingdom Relations established a secretariat with the aim to strengthen the policy layer in government by creating a platform to be used as a mechanism to facilitate the sharing of information and foster more frequent and open communication to build capacity amongst the workers and ultimately break silos and seamlessly integrate interministerial policies. In essence, the policy platform is a group of policy workers and advisors throughout the 7 ministries who meet to discuss relevant topics on common interest in the effort to safeguard resources and the duplication of efforts while ensuring policy workers are working and walking together in the same coherent direction. The purpose of the platform is therefore to strengthen capacity, improve public service, and increase the overall efficiency of the government apparatus. To describe a bit of how the platform functions, each year based on key initiatives, the governing program, or ministerial plans, topics are chosen by the Secretariat and scheduled for plenary discussions. During the first session of each year, these topics are brought forward to the platform during the meetings, and if necessary, relevant documents are dispersed in the meetings to all members. During the meetings, the members have the freedom to pose questions, make comments, or make suggestions. Some meetings are for information purposes and others are for discussion purposes on the common topics throughout the ministries. The platform typically communicates through the Microsoft Teams app and is a digital platform, which also means that information documents are stored and meetings can also be held online. The structure of the platform is made up of a secretariat and a plenary body. The secretariat consists of 4 civil servants: Angelique Gums, who just spoke, she's the head of the BAC department; Eliane Kiringongo is a policy advisor for the personnel and organization; Mr. Luke Hawkins, who will speak after me, he is a section head of the Department of Personnel and Organization; and of course myself. The Secretariat functions as a coordinator for the platform and is tasked with all administrative responsibilities to ensure that the platform can function optimally and effectively. As the coordinator, the Secretariat is tasked with administrative preparations for the meetings, keep track of all the new policy workers, ensuring the committee and the platform meets frequently, making and distributing topics and minutes for the meetings, management of the policy database, which means that we ensure that all the policies and documents shared are uploaded on the Teams platform, arranging work groups, and trainings, ensuring proper alignment of the policies with political views, ensuring proper integration and sharing of policies, and advising on standard internal policies, procedures, forms, and templates. De Landsverordening Inrichting en Organisatie, de LIO, loosely translated the National Ordinance for Organization of the Government Structure, describes 16 policy departments. The plenary platform consists of all policy workers and advisors from these departments, totaling currently 89 policy workers, advisors, senior workers, and department heads. Since its inception, the platform aimed for a minimum of 6 meetings each year, with plenary meetings every 2 months. Meetings were held both in person and online with interesting topics. Sorry, this don't seem to want to work with me. With interesting topics such as the introduction of government, disaster management in preparation for hurricane season, and of course, integrating the National Development Vision with current policies. There were 2 workshops held and 1 training still to be executed under the policy platform. A policy manual, as well as a template, was also created to support the development of policies. The manual provides a detailed explanation of the how-to and what to do as it pertains to writing policies, and the templates is an easy step-by-step guide to creating a policy document. Both the manual and the template have been officially approved by the Council of Ministers as the official policy template to be used by all policy workers. Additionally, from the policy platform, we have the internal library, which is another initiative to support the sharing of information. Education is a topic that irrevocably is connected to the development of any nation. Without the ability to enhance oneself, broaden one's perspective and insight, where would we be? The objective of the internal library is therefore to facilitate access to information, provide reading, and serve as the internal library for all policy workers. There are over 50 physical books and multiple digital files spanning from various subjects and authors. The intranet, has a similar function as the internal library, as it functions as a digital central source for information. All information from and about the ministries will be stored on the intranet. However, the internet will be made accessible to all civil servants instead of simply the policy advisors. Due to technical difficulties, we have unfortunately not yet launched the intranet centrally. However, in the coming months, the site will be relaunched to the entire organization. Newsletters, of course, also source as an information tool to distribute information throughout the government apparatus. The dashboard is fairly new. It's a new initiative, and it is still in the design phase. However, the main objective is to be able to showcase all the projects that can be linked under the 3 pillars of the NDV, aligning the projects with the Sustainable Development Goals and other overarching programs such as the governing program. It's important to note that the majority of all of the initiatives mentioned seek to share information, build capacity, and have a unified approach to getting things done internally. In the coming months, the execution platform, which also derived from the policy platform, will also be launched. The execution platform is an additional layer of workers. It will comprise of the management team within government, as each layer in government is expected to have a platform to share information to ensure that all on each level of government that we are all going in the same direction. This platform will provide the policy platform with practical insight as it pertains to the daily task and execution of all agencies, and when and where necessary, they will also receive directives from the policy platform. As we transition towards the new concept of work, which is the alignment of all activities, whether it be new initiatives, projects, programs, policies, or procedures, to the national development vision, we will build a society that has confidence in the direction of its government. The people will be empowered by building capacity, and the government as a collective body will be more effective. For more information about the policy platform and all other initiatives that were mentioned here today, please do not hesitate to contact myself or Ms. Corindongo via these emails. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank publicly the stakeholders, businesses, NGOs, civil society, and all organizations and people represented here today for your contribution in finalizing this document that was presented this week. We have come a long way. However, this is the first step towards a sustainable, inclusive St. Maarten. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hickinson. And as you can see, she focused on the policy platform and the move of the St. Maarten government away from siloed thinking towards nexus thinking in order to ensure a safe, secure, decisive, and independent nation. So next, we're going to roll right into our third and last speaker for today before we have our questions, which is Mr. Lute Huckins. Mr. Huckins studies social work, labor and organizational psychology, and public management. He has worked for the Department of P&O since the year 2000, first as interim head, and since 2004 as the section head for personnel and organization policies. He is responsible for the development and implementation of all P&O policies and maintenance of the organization structure. He was responsible for the reorganization of the entire civil service of the island territory of St. Maarten in 2008. In the run-up to 10-10-10, he was responsible for designing and implementing the organizational structure for country St. Maarten. So he will also be presenting on facets of goals 23, 24, and 25. Mr. Huckins, the podium is now yours.
Use the... Okay, good morning. The best thing of being the last speaker is that everybody loves to see you come. And maybe even love to see me go again as well. What are we going to do today? This presentation is about the relationship of the NDV and the government organization. Oops. Yep. What the overall government organization looks like, what a basic process of any organization is, what kind of problems are affecting the organization, and what are we doing about organizational and management, labor market, and personnel problems. And generally speaking, where are we in that process? The NDV and the organization. The NDV mentions the organization, government organization, as an effective and stable government organization is a prerequisite for the realization of country development objectives. I think we heard this repeatedly today, that we are not there yet. Okay. In this presentation, I make a distinction between government and organization. Government means the Council of Ministers, let's say the political branch, and the organization is the civil service. And the presentation is about the civil service. The government organization. The government has 7 ministries, 16 departments, and 37 services. What's the difference between a department and a service? Departments develop and monitor policies. Nikima spoke about that. Services, sometimes called divisions, execute tasks, like for instance the civil registry or the police force. An inspectorate is a service that inspects compliance with rules and regulation. Next to that, we have 4 support services that provide services to the entire organization. So they are not geared towards the public, but to the organization itself. Being the personnel and organization, the ICT department, facility services, and the DIF department, which deals with archives and documents, etc. About organizations. If I counted it up correctly, there are 57 parts. And all these parts by itself can also be seen as organizations by themselves. And any organization has a similar transformation process. What does that mean? What does an organization do? They use resources, and generally speaking, we have 4 kinds of resources. One is finances. It's not only cash, but also invested in buildings, etc. Technology / know-how, depending on what the organization does. Are you a company, are you production, or in government, is mainly know-how. This includes also the know-how of organizing the transformational process. The third resource is personnel. our most valued, but also often most expensive resource. And the fourth resource is the use of materials, in this case also / information can be grouped under there. Some of the problems facing the 57, we have categorized them as organization problems. What does that mean? It's the question, do we have the right organization design? That includes the split up in 37 different services, etc. Also, manpower, job description, etc. A second cluster is management problems. Are our managers effective? The third cluster is labor market problems. Can we attract and keep the right people? Next, personnel problems. Are our workers able and willing to do their jobs? Read motivated. And the last one, financial problem. But let's not talk about that. I couldn't stay in the 10 minutes that way. What are we doing about the organizational problems? At this point, we are hopefully starting shortly in doing an overall scan of all the 57 different parts to find out which are performing well and which are not. If not performing well, determine what is causing the misfunctioning, what can be done about it. And then, of course, we need to draft action plans to address these kind of problems, be it design flaws, ineffective work process, management problems, staffing problems, etc. But first, of course, we need to perform a scan to find out which department or service is facing what problem. About management problems, we have in total 7 SGs, 57 heads of departments and services, and another 50-something section heads. I'm one of those. What is a section head? That is if a department or service is subdivided and has a manager over those subdivisions. We need our own leadership program to better equip our managers and better plan succession. We are going to commission the design of just that, including trainings, etc. All required training material, etc., etc. What do we do about labor market problems? Government is facing difficulty in attracting the right personnel. We are also witnessing an exodus of highly qualified personnel. In order to find out what is going on and what to do about it, we have commissioned an employee satisfaction and employee exit survey. Surveys are planned, for the exit one for December and the satisfaction survey for January next year. Next, also already started, is a labor market research to find out how government's benefits package and other working conditions measure up with others. Why is that important? We notice that we are losing staffers to, for instance, other government-owned companies or public, semi-public institutions, where we never see workers from there coming towards government. Maybe we're not doing everything right. Be it, so we need to find out what is what. About personnel problems, we already finalized a scan of the organization's HR functions. This included policies, consultation, administration, training, etc. It resulted in 30 recommendations. They cover, broadly speaking, 5 areas. First one is strengthening HR development, which is training and development, like the leadership program you just mentioned. The second one is strategic personnel planning. What our, oh, sorry. I'm almost done, you know. Do I need to start over? What is strategic personnel planning? Knowing what our personnel needs are now and in the future. Things are happening, like e-government. Does that mean we need the same amount of people, the same qualifications in people, etc.? And when are those shifts taking place? And the other way is, how do we attract the right employees and keep them? The third cluster is strengthening the personnel department itself and streamlining all its processes. The fourth one is strengthening management. I already mentioned that. And the fifth one is to create an integrity program. What is the present state of affairs? You may have noticed that many of these initiatives are still in the research phase. The labor market research, for instance, will generate input for possible adjustments in the remuneration package or other working conditions. Some of the necessary changes emerging from this research are not quick fixes. They may take years. For a leadership program to generate good results, it's not done overnight. It will take time. However, if we don't start, we will not get there. And my last here is that for some of these activities, we are getting support from the Netherlands, mainly in the form of resources. And I think I made it in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Luthakens, who spoke on the role of government and the fact that it remains imperative and pivotal in accomplishing all 3 thematic areas and all 25 objectives linked to those. And as such, future and further structuring of the government organization remains important. So now I'm going to invite all 3 speakers to the table for our discussion. And I'm already seeing some persons who had questions. And I have a question that was actually posed to me several times over the course of the 3 days to start off. So if you have a question, please indicate that you would like to have the mic. We have about 30 seconds to pose the question. I said initially we were going to have 6 questions, but actually we're going to have about 4 because we still have 2 other points in the program to go over to. I'm looking for the mic for this table. One second. Aha, yes. So my question, or the question that has been posed to me actually by persons in the audience from several quarters, is actually about the funding. So where are we going to get the funding for many of these innovative, promising ideals that are in the National Development Vision? What are our funding pathways? Who are our funding partners? I think I will pose this question to you, Ms. Gums, and if other persons on the panel would like to jump in, that's fine, but I think you can go ahead and start with it.
Okay, thank you for that question. I think that is actually a very good question. Funding for projects under the National Development Vision, again, a layered approach. National budget, that's why we have a national vision now, so that we are able to prioritize according to the National Development Vision goals. That's one. 2, St. Maarten also receives international aid and funding from, for example, the European Union. We are currently going into the new programming period of 2021-2027. So this too will be added to the layer of funding. as well as that we also receive technical assistance and support from other agencies such as the UNDP, who's also a partner for this project. So funding is there, however, we have to be smart and efficient and effective when we are applying funding to what. And again, that is why a vision is of utmost importance, because it ensures that everything is directed into the right direction to achieve the goals that we all set out as a consensus and agreed on.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else want to jump in? No? Okay, so then I have another question, because I see that today there are not many questions actually from the audience. I have a question from Mr. Huckins. You said that these are not quick fixes, right? That some of these things will take years to accomplish. What is the strategy then for the interim? Because, I mean, the National Development Vision is now launched, and we're going to work towards accomplishing these goals. What is the strategy for the interim to ensure that the work continues to get done in an efficient and effective manner for St. Maarten?
There is not a direct strategy in place, other than that we have to see what are the most acute bottlenecks. May it be the remuneration issues or other issues that we can tackle fast. But some of those measures, they will take much more time. Like what I mentioned, if you start a training program, the results will come a lot later. So we need to find out first, why are people leaving government, and then decide what the strategy is, how to, tackle that problem in the short term. So not everything takes a long time, but some things do.
Good afternoon. Sharon Kanjiter, 𝒚𝒐𝒖𝒓. My question is to Mr. Huckins. You mentioned in your presentation that civil servants are leaving government, or people are leaving government. You just mentioned just now that maybe you might have to do a study as to why they're leaving. But my question is, if they're leaving now, have we identified why they're leaving? Have we been able to plug that hole, or is there immediate plans to look into that particular system as to why we have a mass exodus?
The idea of having the surveys is to find out what the reasons are. There's no lack of, opinions on this. But like what the statistics presentation showed us, we have to measure, because people are not necessarily convinced by my opinion on this. So we need to, put it together. What are the causes? And again, it may sound a little bit dramatic if I say an exodus, but it's not all over government. It is in certain areas. And so government is not going to fall down right away. But what we need to do then is find out, because if you only have an opinion and it turns out you're wrong, you can do a lot of interventions that are a waste of money and resources, because they do not give the results you are seeking. So yes, we have to first find out for sure what are the reasons, and then we can determine what our recourse will be.
Good morning. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I am Silhouette Richardson, the head of the Ambulance Department of the Ministry of Public Health, Social Development, and Labor. I have a question with regards to the Office of Disaster Management. From what I understood, I know the Office of Disaster Management was put in place after Hurricane Lewis. And my question directly is, what timeline are we looking at as what was presented as to a project regarding revamping or getting things put in place? What timeline are we looking at?
So with the enactment of the legislation in 2010, the Section Disaster Management was created under the Ministry of General Affairs, Fire Department. This project is scheduled to take off January 2023. I see we have some representatives in the room that are partners in this project, as well as our technical support is also in this room for that project. So come 2023, and the project is for 12 months. So we don't expect a long span because the legal basis to create it is already there.
Good morning, Raymond Chisurun. We have addressed these 3 days, the National Development Vision for 2030 and beyond. Very attentive, I followed what was presented, and I missed this reflection. We have country packages that are being implemented, which means our national development is already in the planning stages imposed by the Dutch government. So how national our national development planning is at the moment? I haven't heard, for instance, a reflection of how are we going to integrate more with the Caribbean region. It looks like we only have to look at our kingdom partners and not at our partners in the region. And we have a lot of people from the region living in St. Maarten. We talk about St. Maarten identity, but we have a lot of them in the region that have an Antillean identity. Can we get a follow-up after this 3 days of reflection so that we can give more input towards that direction?
Okay, so that's also a good question, Mr. Yesarun. The country reform measures are just that, measures. It's not a high-level vision. This is a vision to which the measures align to the vision back in 2020 when these measures started, or when these measures were announced. I think you would remember that the Prime Minister from then was making clear to the Netherlands that whatever it is needs to align to the vision of St. Maarten, and we kept mentioning the vision and we kept hammering for the vision. So these are all projects under the vision. Bear in mind that these are not the only projects that government is also executing. Government is also executing its governing program, projects under that, as well as that government is also executing the ministry plans. We have a whole range that needs to align to the National Development Vision. That includes, for example, projects that NGOs are doing, projects that the business sector are doing. They all need to align because, again, we agreed that this is the direction that we want to go in. Where regionalism is concerned, I think, too, that has been made very clear over, especially the last year. Recently, last year, September, I believe you would have heard that St. Maarten and Sedima is also very active with each other. So that regional integration is also a trajectory that we have embarked on and that will not stop. At the end of the day, again, this is a high-level vision. The steps and projects that are needed to achieve the goals is what we are now on.
Thank you. We have our final question from Mr. Connor.
I was just trying to get Vijay's attention because she mentioned in your presentation about the tourism. Right. But it's focused on tourism. So then the question to Mr. Hawkins, because he spoke about the organization versus government. And my question is the organization looking at the way in which not only the effectiveness of how the organization is structured, but how effective is the organization serving the public? Is that being considered in your approach to improving?
Interesting question. The personnel department, of course, is not, the department that would look at the organization through the eyes of the public. But of course, there are, generally speaking, different perspectives you can take. You can look at the effectiveness of government through the eyes of the public, through the eyes of the Minister of Finance, and from an organizational point of view. What we haven't determined completely yet is how broad the scan will be of the effectiveness. So which elements will be put in there? As I said, we are working on a setup on how to do that, and we will have to determine exactly from which perspectives the organization will be, scanned on its effectiveness and efficiency. Sorry, I can't give you another answer.
Okay, so we actually have a minute for one more question, and I actually have a question because it was brought up, I think by Ms. Janssen-Webster indeed, about the fact that even within government, persons are reluctant to be a part of data gathering or sharing information. And I think we know that throughout the National Development Vision, the need for data and data dissemination remains pivotal. So how do we then create an atmosphere, and this is for any of the three of you, within the government apparatus where there is a mindset towards sharing, towards collaboration, towards cooperation, so that these three themes and 25 goals can actually be accomplished? Because I think at the end of the day, it also starts very much within the civil service and then trickles out to public sector, and private sector, and all of the NGOs, etc.
I think your question ties directly into the policy platform, because that is why the policy platform was created. It allows for the collaboration of all policy advisors from all ministries, across ministries. What we have seen from 2019, since its inception, is that that pool of civil servants are very, very, very much interested in working together. Since we started with the meetings, the majority of the policy advisors have been attending the meetings. They're even asking for meetings. They're making suggestions on topics for meetings. And they're very interested in sharing the information that they have. We noticed that not because they are working in government means, of course, that they know everything and all the workings of governments or of the other ministries, for instance. So they use this opportunity, or use the platform rather, to be able to get that information, to be able to link with a peer in the Ministry of Education, for instance, or the Ministry of 𝒕𝒂𝒄𝒉. So I think having these platforms on all levels, whether it's SG level, whether it's policy level, and also now the execution level, it affords the civil servants the opportunity to indeed collaborate, and in cases where they may not have known what Veronica, for instance, does or where she works, now they have the opportunity because they have seen her in the last meeting and they have her contact and they know what she does, and they're now able to contact her and talk to her and just have that one-on-one and ensure that even if they're working on policies or legislation, that an office or a ministry that is associated with whatever document they're working on, whether it's a legislation, a policy, or procedure, that ministry is also involved in their work as well. So they're collaborating very well coming out of this policy platform.
Thank you very much, and that brings me to the end.
I would just like to add to that a good development as well that we've seen in the last year or so is that the Secretary General's platform is very much up and running and meets on a weekly basis. I see some of the SGs here today as well. So that too ensures a high level coordination and collaboration. And that too is the reason, I believe then too, that too is also the reason why we are successful with what we are doing, especially with the measures at this point in time. So it takes that basically getting together on a structural basis.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of my portion of the program. I want to say thank you very much to the organizers for having me, and congratulations for a beautiful conference. We have the document. Please read it. I've had the privilege to read it, and it's good stuff. So please read it, and hopefully in 6 months, a year, 2 years, we're back together and we can discuss what we've accomplished. I turn the mic back over to Mr. 𝒕𝒉𝒆💏.
Thank you very much. Let's thank Lizanne also for doing a fantastic job with the moderating. We're going to beg your indulgence because we have one more presenter, and that's the Prime Minister, who's going to come to do the closing. You know, when you look at an octopus, sometimes you wonder, how does that creature with its 8 limbs move forward? But it does. And I think if you were to look at the structure of government, 8 limbs would not be enough to talk about the intricacies of government. But that's no reason for us to not do anything. And in order for us to move forward, we have to take action, and we have to applaud all of those that are involved with this national development vision, because they are taking action in order for us to move forward as a nation. So let's give all of the speakers that presented over the last 3 days another round of applause. And at this time, I'm going to call on Angelique Gums and the Prime Minister, and we'll also call, you see his suit? You all saw his outfit? Let him come up here so you can see the outfit. Let's welcome the Minister of Education. By popular demand, they ask that you come up, that you join them here at the lectern as well. No one told me that we could address in St. Martin's Day colors today. So I'm now going to give the mic to the Prime Minister, who's going to do the closing remarks this afternoon. Madam PM, are you ready? Or Angelique?
Good afternoon. I would say, even in regular life, as we get up and we do the things the way we do them, we dress the way we dress, we eat the food that we prepare and the way we prepare them, we go to work in the way we go to work, and have the feelings about the work that we do, it all comes down to our way of doing things, to our culture. And from that perspective, I want to say, when we have a vision, means that we have thought about what it is we want. In order for that vision to become what we want it to become, we need to have a desire. And that desire really needs to be a burning desire. We really need to have something deep down inside that tells us, this is our plan, this is how we see it. But if you don't have that burning desire to make this come true, it won't. So I would like us to think about that. And with the time coming tomorrow, I would like to take this opportunity to wish us all a very happy St. Martin's Day tomorrow. Thank you.
So one last part for the launch of the National Development Vision is the creation of the National Development Vision dashboard. This dashboard is not just internal, it's external as well, so that the public is also aware of the visionary goals, the themes, and the projects that government is working on, and the status of those projects for the next coming years. We've started with the basics here, to which over the coming months, the functionalities will be increased, and the dashboard will be updated on a quarterly basis. So, as of today, the dashboard will go live once PM clicks the home button. And everyone will be able to basically go on the dashboard on a regular, click on the project that you want. They're all there. You can see the description. You can see who's busy with the project. This gives you insight into what we are doing, when we are doing, and the time frame. So, PM, if you can click the home, but you gotta look there to click on the home. Get it. Yeah, almost.
Up is down and down is up. It's crazy.
Yeah, then
It's jumping away.
yeah, this is it.
Lizzie? Technology guy?
Yes. Ja, dus als het goed is staat hij aan nu. En dan is het zo. Yeah. All right. So if you go into it, you will see the 3 themes. Of course, this is on, well, we don't see the same thing, but this is on how it's viewed here. But you will see the 3 themes, and then let me see if I can maneuver. And then you can delve into theme 1. Theme 1 shows you what it is. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. What? And then you have the goals. And you can also view the projects that are under the goals. So as I indicated, this is the start. This is the basics for now. If you click on the projects, you can actually go into them as well. Even kijken of ik dat voor elkaar krijg. Yeah. Yes. And then, wacht even. Okay. Okay. All right. So if you click on these, you can actually go into it on your own phone and computer. The link is on the website of government. You can click the link, and it will automatically take you to the dashboard, and you can play around in it going forward. As we go along, all the other projects that are on the way will be uploaded to the dashboard as well.
Wow, give them another round of applause, please. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Yes, today it's been 3 days, but we've come to the end of what I think has been a very successful launch of the National Development Vision of St. Maarten. In my opening remarks a few days ago, I mentioned that as government, it is imperative that we have a definitive vision, as it gives a sense of direction, and a larger purpose for our civil servants and all of the stakeholders that have been involved and will continue to be involved, so that they can rally around and be focused on the same goals, working together in transparency, collaboratively, and with inclusion, putting the people at the center of it all. During these 3 days of sharing our vision for 2030 and beyond, which is aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals, listening to the presentations and absorbing the wealth of work that has gone into this National Development Vision over the past 10 years, I am inspired. My colleagues in the Council of Ministers are inspired. The SGs, the department heads, and all those who have been here, who have followed online, I trust are also inspired. We've had government-owned companies, high councils, hardworking civil servants, entities, CSOs, NGOs, youth, corporate, as well as social partners, and the general citizens, all either in here or tuned in. And even more importantly, I trust that now we all see where we fit in this journey towards the vision. I think that was stressed especially on day one. And know that there is a very, very important role for each of you, for each of us, to play in the success of the execution thereof. When embarking on this journey, I envisioned that St. Maarten would be a place where every citizen has the opportunity, that word, the opportunity to realize their dreams, to live, play, work, create, prosper, and be happy in a safe, healthy, and sustainable environment. With this national vision, all work currently being done, because a lot is being done, can now be identified, classified, tracked, and its impact assessed to ensure it's executing the goals. Persons working diligently for years in their specialties will now be able to see where other stakeholders are, maybe on the same topic in the same venue, but coming from a different angle. And this will raise the level of transparency, as Angelique just demonstrated with dashboard. Everyone will be able to see, ensuring, therefore, that all the work, to avoid unnecessary overlap and repetition, and increase efficiency and effectiveness, thereby ensuring that all the good work being done is being done with that bigger picture in mind, whereby adjustments can be made timely. And if we're going off track or need to adjust the changing landscape, because of the changing landscape that is our world, that we are able to adapt quickly. The presentations, which were done during these 3 days, clearly showed the interconnectivity of the topics covered, how one impacts the other, and amplifies the need for greater collaboration. The National Development Vision is simply where we see ourselves as a government, as a people in the future, and the direction that we want to go in. And after these sessions, a deep dive by each of you into this vision, which is now at your fingertips, gives all who are connected to it the opportunity to step up to the plate, to contribute to its success. This collaboration, Partnerships for the Goal, SDG 17, will effectively impact the quality of our life, the lives of our people, and improve our ability to sustain ourselves financially via a healthy and diverse economy. Isn't that what we want? Sorry? Oh, okay. we have a clear picture of who we are and where we want to be. And from the feedback noted from all the sectors who represented, presented, and listened and questioned, I know all can find themselves in this document. Now it's the time for the next steps, which in some cases, as we've seen and heard, are well underway. Now it is time to determine and present the detailed strategies and the actions, some of which were discussed these past few days. The two key priorities I want to recap that were identified as preconditions to be able to effectively realize St. Martin's National Development Vision for 2030 and beyond are governance for effective public administration and sustainable development, reliable data, and efficient data management. These three development themes that were covered this week: a compassionate and united nation, a strong and resilient economy, and a safe, secured, decisive, and independent nation, each with their three sub-themes outlining the 25 visionary goals anchored in the SDGs, were briefly presented and discussed, but we all realized that 10 minutes definitely did not do them any service. So I encourage you to read, to explore, to question. Definitely question. Discuss in your own circles, but then bring it back to the group. Bring it back to the vision committee. Bring it back to the website, wherever they have the space for comments. Make your comments. This is where you have the input. And that is for you sitting in the room, but also all those who will be viewing this broadcast. Because it's not just for policymakers, it's not just for high-level government officials, it is for everyone. And I really would like to encourage the youth and all youth leaders to delve into it with the youth, the schools to delve into it with your teachers and students to ensure that participation and inclusion is not left out. There should be no excuse with it being at our fingertips. And why I say that is because it will be a living document, adapting and changing as we move along. Who could have imagined, after coming out of Hurricanes Irma and Maria and starting to recover in 2019, that we would have to take a hard left with COVID? Everybody in the world finally saw what we deal with and other vulnerable communities like us when we're hit by hurricanes. But then it wasn't for a week or two. It wasn't a cleanup and then we move on. It was something that continued to happen, repeat itself, and affect every aspect of our existence. Our very existence as a small island developing state, depends on what we are doing now. A lot has been done, and we all know a lot more needs to be done. And I want to encourage you not to lose faith, not to lose hope. Several key phrases, if you were here for the 3 days, jumped out at me. Data, data, data. Data-driven decisions, data-driven policy, and data-driven legislation. Inclusion, youth, community groups as agents of change. Focus on family as core or the building blocks of our community. Education, training for lifelong learning and comprehensive development. People, planet, prosperity, 3 Ps. People, planet, prosperity. And investment, innovation, and insurance. And in those 3 Ps and 3 Is, most of the other stuff could be found. Because we're talking about fiscal resilience, strengthening institutional capacity, food security, agriculture, imports, exports, heritage, culture, orange economy as a driver of development, environment, blue and green economies, biodiversity, climate change, sustainable energy, nature-based solutions, waste management. MSMEs, the backbone of our economy with 80+%, engines for growth, them being the engines for growth, integrated programs, access to resources and financing, improved compliance, entrepreneurs running programs like the ESP, the SEDP, and Marlon isn't here today, I don't think, but she was here the other 2 days, key in training our entrepreneurs to be able to remain sustainable and stay afloat, as well as islandpreneurs, so many hard workers in our community. The last two that stand out are the healthcare system versus the sick care system. That one was an eye-opener for me, and the focus on prevention and total wellness. Total physical and mental wellness, instead of spending a whole lot of money on after it's already too late. Sustainable and diverse tourism product, diverse economy, digitalization, and resilient development. I didn't have many notes for what happened today, but it was all about our policies and what we're doing as government. And what I think we need to do much, much better is communicate what all is taking place within the halls of government, within our NGOs, CSOs, and how we're collaborating. I am impressed. I am inspired. I am in awe of all the good work that has been done across the board. Though some may say we're sick of the talk, this talk this past 3 days was surely necessary. This document is necessary and will drive more talk, more discussion, more information, and transparency between departments, between ministries, and externally to the entire St. Maarten population. I'd like to thank all of you who have worked diligently to get to this point, the Department of the Interior and Kingdom Relations, BAC, and its stakeholders, the external consultants, technical assistants, the UNDP, the EU funds, UNESCO, UNICEF, SMDF, and all those entities in the business and economic sector that contributed. Lastly, I'd like to highly commend the members of the organizing committee. Can you give a rousing round of applause? The organizing committee of the National Development Launch, please join me. Alien, Kirindongo, Andrea, Nikima, Emilia, Fabiana, Yunelda, Angelique, and of course, with the support by Cedranella and Nerissa. Give them all a big round of applause. You have done an awesome job. St. Maarten is truly proud of the way you've executed the preparation for and this launch today. Give them a big round of applause. I'd also like to thank all who participated in the previous dialogues, because we couldn't reach to this vision without that. And of course, the Ministries of General Affairs, ECYS, TIAT, VSA, Finance, VROMI, and Justice, all of the hard workers in there. But the SunFed, the St. Maarten Youth Council, the museum, the Be the Change Foundation, Community Police, St. Maarten Housing Development Foundation, Anchor Business Service, Natural Health Club, SMSPA, representatives of the Milton Peters College, UNESCO, One St. Maarten People, Rijksdienst Caribisch Nederland, Peridot Foundation, TELEM, SUMEF, and so many others. And I would also like to invite Ms. Pearl Hendrickson, who was key to assisting us in getting the National Development Vision written, to join us here as well. I'd like to thank the Rotary Club of St. Maarten Sunset, as well as the United Nations Development Program, and all our presenters over the past 3 days, Mrs. Marcelia Henry, Mr. Lenworth Wilson, Ms. Makisha Brooks, Mr. Tatio Bervoets, Mr. Javier Asin, or Dr. Javier Asin, Ms. Erin Ellis, Ms. Raquel Lofo Wong, Ms. Ife Barijo, Dr. Ife Barijo, Ms. Jennifer Carty, Mr. Alex Gums, Ms. Valia Pantaflet, Ms. Natasha Gums, Ms. Jessica Rogers, Mr. Jason Rogers, Mrs. Veronica Janssen, Webster Janssen, something felt wrong. Mr. Quincy Lund, Ms. Nikima Hickinson, Ms. Angelique Gomes, and Mr. Lute Hawkins. Give a big round of applause to all our St. Maarten contributors. St. Maarten is a real place. I rebuke everything else that you say about it because these are the hardworking people and all our presenters as well. Thank you to our MC, Mr. Rolando Tobias, our moderator, Ms. Lizanne Charles, and last but not least, to all the people of St. Maarten. This has been a truly collaborative effort for which the ultimate beneficiaries will be the people of St. Maarten for generations to come. Reiterating UNDP's representative, Mr. Noto's words, we must keep the people at the center of all development, of all decision making. And I especially want to highlight the youth because that was mentioned a lot. But I hope you realize the youth were a core part of it, even in presenting here. Jessica Rogers is a youth. Erin Ellis is a youth. I still consider Makisha Brooks a youth. Alex Gomes is youth. And I mean, if they're just on the cusp of not being considered youth anymore, they are young St. Martiners, and they were vibrant. And Marcy, even if we ain't as young in age, your energy was awesome. So two things the SDG focuses on a lot, youth and gender equality. Look up here. I think we did it on gender equality. In fact, everywhere I go, internationally, I can brag about the women in places where decisions are made. Congratulations. In this organization, the men are in the minority, unfortunately. So we have to celebrate them. This is Men's Month, eh? This is Men's Month. Let's not forget them, November 19th, in the midst of all the other celebrations. See, I said it first. I am honored to now, oh, I did it already, launch a dashboard. But thank you, especially a hearty thank you to Angelique. She's the driver, the engine, the motor, the heart, the blood, the veins. And she gets everyone else to do her bidding. Great. Yes, she does. But for this reason, we'll accept it, Angelique, because it all came to fruition, and now the harder work comes. And I'm looking forward to all of you contributing to that continued progress. We are moving into St. Maarten Day. St. Maarten Day. And we are a strong people. And with vision and passionate action, we will get where we want to be. Happy, advanced St. Maarten Day. Be safe. Enjoy it. Come out and enjoy your cultural aspects because our culture is strong. And we see that heritage and national pride is key to us wanting to build this country. Enjoy the rest of your day. We go back to regular work, but it has been a wonderful lodge. Congratulations to the people of St. Maarten. Okay,